Everyone knows the story. If you were born on your golden birthday, or on a big round number, or under some flashy calendar coincidence like 1212 or the day of an eclipse, you got dealt a good hand. Culturally, we treat certain birth dates like winning lottery tickets. The internet loves lists like rarest birthdays and luckiest zodiac dates, usually ranking things by pure numerology or by whichever sign gets the most flattering horoscope copy that year. It feels convincing because we're pattern-hungry creatures, and a repeating number or a headline-grabbing sky event is easy to notice and easy to remember. But here's the detail that quietly wrecks that whole framework. Astrology doesn't actually assign luck to a calendar date. It assigns it to a moment, and a moment only becomes meaningful once you attach a location and a birth time to it. The exact same date, say March 20th, can produce a chart soaked in favorable dignity in one city and a chart with the same sun sign but a brutal ascendant and a stressed moon in another. So when people say this is the luckiest birthday, they're skipping the one variable astrology actually treats as decisive, the rising sign and the specific planetary placements at that instant, not the pretty date on the cake. That's the real question I want to dig into today. If luck isn't really about the date on the calendar, what is it about? Astrologically, and are there birthday days that consistently produce better structural odds, not because the universe is handing out gold stars, but because of something more specific, more mechanical, and honestly more interesting? Let's start with why the date-based luck myth exists at all. Because it's not baseless, it's just incomplete. Solar return charts are built around your sun's exact yearly position, and every astrologer worth their salt uses your birthday as an anchor point for the year ahead. So there's a real reason birthdays feel astrologically loaded. The sun is your core vitality, your identity engine, and the sign and degree it occupies does matter. If you're born when the sun is in a sign ruled by a planet in its own dignity, meaning that planet is comfortably at home, that does add a layer of ease. A Taurus sun with Venus strong and unafflicted nearby, for instance, tends to have a smoother relationship with self-worth and resources than someone whose chart ruler is combust or badly aspected. So dates aren't irrelevant, they're just not the whole engine. The bigger mechanism, the one true luck rankings need to include, is the aspect pattern active on that day, especially involving Jupiter, Venus, and the moon's nodes. Jupiter is the planet most associated with expansion, opportunity, and favorable timing, so being born during a Jupiter transit that's harmoniously aspecting the sun or ascendant is a genuinely strong structural advantage, not a guarantee of a charmed life, but a real tailwind. Think of Jupiter like a favorable current in a river. If you're swimming with a 2-mile-per-hour current behind you, you're still doing the swimming, you still need skill and effort, but you're covering ground faster than someone fighting upstream. That's what a well-aspected Jupiter birthday gives you. Current, not a free boat ride. Now here's where the investigation gets specific. If we're building an actual ranked list of lucky birthday days, we have to define luck honestly as a cluster of chart conditions rather than a vibe. I'm using 4 criteria: strong dignified rulers, harmonious major aspects, timing near beneficial lunar phases, and freedom from what's called combustion, where a planet sits too close to the sun and gets astrologically scorched, losing its ability to help you. Let's talk about the new moon birthday first, because it's a fan favorite online, and it partly deserves the hype. Being born under a new moon means your sun and moon are in the same sign, in close conjunction. This creates what's sometimes called a lunar return alignment right out of the gate, a kind of internal agreement between your identity and your instincts. Practically, it often shows up as people who don't experience much internal conflict between what they want and what they feel. Their gut and their goals tend to point the same direction. That's a real advantage in decision-making and momentum. It is not, however, automatically lucky in the sense of external reward. New moon natives can still be born into difficult Saturn placements, difficult family houses, or hard aspects elsewhere in the chart. The alignment gives internal coherence. It doesn't override everything else in the sky. Compare that to a full moon birthday, which the internet often treats as ominous, all that talk of full moon chaos and full moon energy. Astrologically, a full moon birthday means your sun and moon are in opposition roughly 6 months apart in the zodiac. This does create more internal tension, wanting one thing consciously while feeling pulled toward its opposite instinctively. But tension isn't automatically bad luck, it's just friction, and friction, when it's workable, builds definition. Some of the most self-aware, dynamic people I've looked at in session have exactly this placement. They had to reconcile 2 poles of themselves early, and that reconciliation became a strength. So if you were ranking pure narrative drama, full moon birthdays are actually more interesting than lucky or unlucky. They're complicated, not cursed. Now let's get to actual Jupiter timing, which is where the real luck signal lives. Jupiter takes about 12 years to orbit the Sun, spending roughly 1 year in each zodiac sign. If you're born while Jupiter is transiting in a favorable aspect to your sun sign, specifically a trine or a sextile, that's the closest thing astrology has to a genuine advantage year for that birthday window. Trines are the geometrically easy angle, 120 degrees, where energy flows without friction, like a green light that stays green the whole way down the street. Sextiles are 60 degrees, a little more effortful but still cooperative, more like a green light that requires you to actually hit the gas rather than coast. Being born during either of these windows means your solar identity got its first breath, while the planet of expansion was already cooperating with it. Here's the objection I know some of you are already forming, and it's a fair one. Doesn't this just mean anyone born in the right 12-month stretch across every sign counts as lucky? Isn't that basically half the population in any given year? Yes, and that's actually the point. Jupiter luck isn't rare or exclusive, it's cyclical and shared. It's less you personally were chosen and more you were born during a favorable season, the way some years are just better vintage years for wine because of the weather. That doesn't make an individual bottle magically perfect. It shifts the baseline odds slightly in a good direction. Anyone telling you a single birth date makes you specially blessed compared to everyone else born that same season is overselling what the mechanism actually does. Let's push further into the part most birthday luck lists skip completely: combustion and cazimi. This is where things get genuinely nerdy and genuinely important. When a planet sits within about 8 degrees of the Sun, it's considered combust, meaning its light gets overwhelmed, like trying to see a candle flame directly next to a stadium spotlight. A combust Venus or combust Mercury on your birthday can mute exactly the themes that planet governs: love and money for Venus, communication and clarity for Mercury. But there's a narrow exception, and it's almost poetic. If a planet sits within about 17 minutes of arc, so almost exactly on top of the Sun, it's called cazimi, meaning in the heart of the Sun. Instead of being burned out, that planet is thought to be empowered, sitting in the Sun's own throne room rather than lost in its glare. Someone born with Mercury cazimi, for example, might have an unusually sharp, sun-blessed way of thinking and speaking, not despite being close to the Sun, but specifically because of how close. This is a real astrological distinction. Exact degree matters enormously, and it's the kind of detail that a generic your birthday number ranking will never capture, because it has nothing to do with the calendar date and everything to do with degree-level precision. So now we can start actually ranking, but responsibly, meaning as tendencies and structural odds, not fixed fates. At the top tier, I'd put birthdays that combine a Jupiter trine or sextile to the Sun with a moon in early phase, first quarter, or waxing crescent, because that pairs expansion with forward momentum, current plus initiative. Second tier, new moon birthdays with a well-dignified Sun, meaning the Sun sits in a sign where its ruling energy is comfortable, like a Leo Sun on a new moon, which is the Sun basically celebrating its own rulership on the very day identity and instinct sync up. Third tier, and this surprises people, Saturn return birthdays, meaning you were born close to when Saturn had just completed a cycle, aren't unlucky at all. They're often associated with people who arrive already structurally serious, disciplined early, less prone to the kind of chaotic setbacks that come from avoiding responsibility. Saturn gets cast as the villain in pop astrology, but Saturn well placed is architecture, not punishment. Lower on structural luck, though never doomed, are birthdays with a combust Venus and a hard Mars square to the Sun simultaneously, because that combination tends to correlate with early friction around self-worth and conflict that has to be consciously metabolized rather than coasted through. But I want to be very careful here, because this is exactly the point where lists like this usually oversell themselves into nonsense. None of these placements are destiny. A Saturn return baby with a difficult early Mars aspect is not sentenced to hardship, and a Jupiter trine baby with a beautiful cazimi Mercury is not guaranteed an easy, charmed existence either. Astrology, at least the way I practice it, describes leanings and pressures, not verdicts. The chart is the terrain, not the ending. Two people born on the same lucky day in the same city can live extremely different lives depending on the rest of the chart, the choices they make, the family they're raised in, the culture around them, and frankly, luck in the mundane, non-astrological sense too. If we pretend otherwise, we're not doing astrology, we're doing fortune-cookie numerology with extra vocabulary. There's also a structural humility point worth sitting with. Astrology traditionally never promised uniform luck distribution across humanity. It actually assumes the opposite, that timing creates real variance. Some seasons genuinely more auspicious than others, which is why traditional astrologers spent so much energy on electional astrology, choosing good moments to start ventures, weddings, journeys. If certain windows are better for starting a business, it stands to reason certain windows are structurally better for starting a life. That's not a moral judgment on anyone born during a harder window. It's closer to being born during a rainy season versus a dry one. You can still build a good house in the rain. You just need better drainage, better planning, more deliberate choices. The people who thrive despite a harder birth window often become the most capable people I encounter, precisely because ease was never handed to them and they built the skill of handling friction instead. So where does that leave the ranking? At the top, structurally sit the Jupiter aspected, waxing moon, well-dignified sun birthdays, because they combine internal coherence with external tailwind. Just beneath them, new moon birthdays in a dignified sign, strong on internal alignment even without the extra Jupiter boost. Solidly respectable, Saturn return birthdays, which trade early ease for long-term durability. And at the bottom of the structural advantage list, though absolutely not the bottom of anyone's actual worth or potential, are combust Venus, hard Mars birthdays, where the early terrain is rockier and the growth is more effortful, which some of the most resilient, hard-won personalities I've ever looked at happen to share. What this whole investigation really dismantles is the idea that luck is a single stamp applied to a date. It's closer to a weather system made of multiple moving bodies, angles, and degrees, all interacting at the exact minute you took your first breath in a specific place on Earth. Change the year, the city, or the hour, and the entire system shifts, even if the calendar date stays identical. That's the part the golden birthday, lucky number crowd never accounts for, and it's the part that actually makes a chart worth calculating rather than just circling a date on a calendar and calling it a day. If you want to know where your own birthday actually lands in this, you'd need your exact time and location, not just the date, because that's where the real mechanism lives. So look at your own chart, or even just your general Jupiter placement and lunar phase at birth, and ask yourself honestly whether the luck you've experienced tracks more with the calendar story you were told or with the structural one underneath it. I'm genuinely curious where you land on this, especially if you've got one of those flashy, lucky birth dates, but a chart that tells a rougher story underneath, or the reverse. Drop your birth details or your own theory in the comments, and if this kind of chart first investigation is your thing, subscribe for more.